Frozen fingers ended more fights than bullets ever did. On the brutal winter fronts of World War II, soldiers didn't just battle the enemy. They battled wind that sliced like glass and cold, that crept into bones and refused to leave. When temperatures crashed far below freezing, a simple mistake with hand protection could cost a soldier his trigger finger, or, well, his entire hand. But out of that frozen chaos came a clever glove trick that helped thousands keep their grip, literally and figuratively. This is the story of the layered glove hack that became a quiet lifesaver. Winter warfare in World War II wasn't a side challenge. It was a full-blown enemy. On the Eastern Front and in Northern Europe, temperatures regularly plunged below -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Metal froze skin on contact. Weapons jammed, skin split open. Frostbite cases overwhelmed field hospitals. Hands were especially vulnerable. Soldiers had to handle rifles, reload magazines, adjust equipment, and dig defensive positions. Bare hands were not an option, but thick mittens made it nearly impossible to operate weapons quickly. That deadly trade-off forced armies to get creative. Early in the war, many soldiers were issued single-layer wool gloves or leather gloves with minimal insulation. They worked in cool weather. They failed in deep winter. Once wet from sweat or snow, they lost most of their insulating power. Wet gloves in freezing air meant rapid heat loss. That is how frostbite starts. Even worse, tight gloves restricted blood flow. Cold already narrows blood vessels. Add pressure and fingers lose warmth even faster. Soldiers learned the hard way that snug gloves could be more dangerous than loose ones. Here is where the game-changing hack came in. Instead of relying on one thick glove, soldiers began using a layered hand system. Thin inner liners combined with larger outer mittens created warmth, flexibility, and protection all at once. The inner layer was usually a thin wool or silk glove. This layer trapped a small amount of warm air close to the skin while still allowing finger movement. It also absorbed sweat, keeping moisture away from the outer layer. Over that came the real hero piece, the oversized mitten. Not tight, not fitted, roomy. That extra space allowed a thick layer of insulating air to form around the entire hand. Air is a powerful insulator when it stays still. That pocket of warmth made a massive difference. Gloves separate each finger. Mittens group fingers together. That sounds simple, but it changes everything. When fingers share space, they share heat. Instead of 5 small heat sources exposed to the cold, you have one combined warm zone. Heat loss drops dramatically. But soldiers still needed dexterity. That is why many armies adopted trigger finger mittens. These mittens had one large compartment for most fingers and a separate section for the index finger. Soldiers could slide that finger out when needed to fire a weapon, then tuck it back inside to re-warm. That small design detail prevented countless cases of frostbite while still allowing combat effectiveness. Cold alone does not cause frostbite as quickly as cold plus moisture. Snow melts, hands sweat during movement. Wet skin loses heat up to 25 times faster than dry skin. Soldiers quickly learned a field trick. Change inner liners whenever possible. Many carried spare thin liners tucked inside their jackets to keep them warm and dry. When one pair became damp, they swapped it out. The dry liner restored insulation immediately. It was a small habit with huge impact. Some troops even dried liners inside their clothing, using body heat during rest periods. Not comfortable, not glamorous, but it worked. One counterintuitive lesson from World War II winter fighting was this. Loose gloves were warmer than tight ones. A snug glove squeezed blood vessels and reduced circulation. Poor circulation meant less warm blood reaching fingers. Frostbite risk shot up. The layered system solved that. The inner glove fit comfortably. The outer mitten was deliberately oversized. That design preserved circulation while maximizing insulation. Soldiers who understood this avoided permanent injuries that sidelined others. When official gear fell short, soldiers improvised. Some added extra cloth wraps between layers, others used scraps of wool as makeshift liners. The principle stayed the same: layering, airspace, dryness, circulation. Veterans later described how simply removing a damp inner glove and replacing it with a dry one could bring painful, numb fingers back to life within minutes. That was not luck. That was battlefield science, learned through experience. Frostbite was not just painful. Severe cases led to blackened tissue, infection, and amputation. Soldiers who lost fingers could not fight effectively. Units with high frostbite rates saw combat strength collapse without a single shot fired. The layered glove system reduced those losses. Medical reports from winter campaigns showed that better hand protection dramatically lowered serious frostbite cases when used correctly. It did not eliminate the danger, but it turned a guaranteed injury into a manageable risk. Modern cold weather gear follows the same logic. Base layer, insulating layer, protective shell. That system, now standard in outdoor survival, owes a lot to lessons learned the hard way during World War II. The soldiers who figured this out were not scientists in labs. They were cold, exhausted fighters trying to keep their fingers attached. Their practical solutions shaped cold weather survival for generations. So next time you see a pair of mittens, remember this. That simple design once stood between a soldier and permanent injury, between holding a rifle and being evacuated, between survival and loss. History is not just about tanks and battles. Sometimes it is about a thin glove, a loose mitten, and the knowledge that staying warm can mean staying alive. If you want more hidden survival tricks, battlefield innovations, and the untold practical side of World War II, make sure you subscribe to 0 Hour of World War II and share this with someone who loves real history with real impact. Watermark: the 0 Hour World War II.